Hello guys, David Vos here. Man, oh man, it's a hot one today. Lots of sunshine, sweltering heat. I hope you're having a wonderful day where you are. Friends, I want to talk a little bit more about this subject we were talking about yesterday, because this is fascinating. You know, I often say that we're going to talk about some things that'll blow your mind, but there's a certain group of individuals in the world right now that kind of has some feelers out, kind of looking for some truth, trying to find some secrets, trying to kind of understand what's really going on. Because that, like we've been saying, I think it's time people start waking up, and we're going to have some big revelations. And so, you know, I think that's kind of why people are saying the earth is flat, because people are trying to abandon the old paradigm. But there's never a shortcut to anything. You can't, you can't just throw all your preconceived and old notions away and just make up stuff because you don't trust what you were told. So we have had some truths or some teachings for a long time that haven't been true. And I agree with a lot of you flat earthers in this, that just about everything we've been told is not true. But how would we ever know what the truth is? Well, here's the secret that we're going to talk about today, that we touched on a lot of it yesterday. There used to be a science. Now you might say, well, that science wasn't true either. How are we going to know that science is true? We can pretty much tell that science has a very good possibility of being accurate. The science that we used to have. A lot of people, though, don't know that we used to have a science. I think a lot of people, over here in the West, we were born Christians, and we were told that the New Testament and the Old Testament is the Word of God, and it says that God made the heavens and the earth in 6 days. Period. Get over it. And it was just 6,000 years of human history, and that's it. So maybe the parable says that God created it in 6 days, and each day seemed to have a gradual progression. Now, primitive peoples could read that and say, oh, God is a white bearded man sitting on yonder heaven throne, and he came down with his finger and a chisel and a hammer, and he created the earth in 6 days. Well, now later generations would come along and say, now wait a minute. Okay, maybe that was six. We now understand that for whatever reason, we found bones under the ground. We dug up, we got archaeology now. Paleontology and things like that. And we notice that there are layers of earth that represent thousands of years. I mean, it's like somebody come along and found out, oh, look at this tree. It has rings. When you cut it down, you can count the rings. It tells you how many years the tree's been here. And then somebody else added to that information, and they found out, wow, you can look at the layers in the Grand Canyon and see that that's been washing away the soil for thousands of years. And in places all around the world, we dig down through the sand hundreds of feet, and we determine very accurately, we've proven that these layers of ground level, each layer we go down, we find another civilization, older and more amazing than the last one. And in some cases, they find very huge bones. There's dinosaurs. And so, what's a dinosaur? We don't have dinosaurs today. But one thing's for sure, when we dig back into the ground in the ancient times, these animals get bigger and the humans get bigger. And I'll be darned if the Bible doesn't have one verse in there that says there were giants in the earth in those days. But up to now, in the West, something happened about 300 AD. All of this ancient wisdom that mankind used to have back in the days of the right of the king, and in Egypt they had the pharaohs, which means the house of God. And so the gods and the children of the gods ruled. And in those days they had city-states. They didn't have democracies and republics and all of this stuff like we do, right? So they had emperors and they had kings and they had dynasties of royal bloodlines that went back to the gods. And the temples housed the information that the gods wanted us to know. But like I said, symbolic, so that one day we would be able to see that they knew all along that this ancient wisdom was known. Perhaps they knew a lot more about it then than we do now. But we lost all that information for several reasons. But all this wisdom was given to mankind. But the temples were decaying and falling down. But some of these great monuments still stand. We don't understand the etchings in the rock anymore. We don't understand for a long time we didn't. We didn't understand how to interpret hieroglyphs or cuneiform. We have a knowledge that is far more workable, enlightening than the knowledge we have today. Now, they say that in the last 100 years we've had this revolution knowledge in Einsteinianism, and now we're into quantum physics, and all of this is getting better and better, and now we're going to the moon. And the truth is that we probably didn't go to the moon. We probably have never left the atmosphere. And this is probably why there's no pictures. Okay? So a lot of people now are starting, because we're still in ignorance, so we don't know. Okay? So we find out. The first thing we start finding out is, well, we don't know, and they've been lying to us. So we start waking up. What they got to do is they got to plant false information. You ever heard of this stuff like, well, if you give them an election, if it was a real election, they'd have freedom because they could elect their own representatives. So what you do is you can't take that away from them because you already gave it to them and they know what elections are. These people aren't stupid. So what you got to do is fool them. You own both parties that they can vote for. You only get to vote for one or the other, two guys. And both of them are owned by the same, working for the same billionaires. So we don't have a choice. This is what they do. They get you believing in the two opposite opposing sides. And this is actually some sort of a method that they've been using ever since Plato, I guess. And it got popular under this concept of the Hegel's dialectics. It is some sort of thing that they use where they argue both sides that contradict each other in a crazy contradiction at two far extremes, one on the left and one on the right. So while you're busy trying to argue against some crazy notion that nobody would believe, it's just a method that they use to get us arguing about things. So they present to us stuff like, let's abort our kids, or transgenderism, or on the other side, some conservative view that we should all just put everybody in prison or whatever. And we're like, oh my gosh, we've got to argue these points. Like Donahue. It was a classic example. They had Donahue running for years during the day. And women would sit and listen to this during the day, or those who didn't, have anything else to do during the day. And they would hear these crazy arguments. And the longer we listen to this, the more it tears down and breaks down our common sense. And meanwhile, we're too busy arguing contradictions that are extreme and crazy that nobody would have. And we're forgetting to talk about things that we actually need to talk about. Real things. What to do about our taxes and our freedoms and so forth. So, since they didn't want you to find out the truth about the cosmology and the true science of the world, but yet they knew that with a computer, we were able to communicate. We could look stuff up. All the books in the world that's been written will be at our fingertips. And people were going to start talking and revealing stuff, and stuff was going to come out. You're going to publish the ancient works. They were digging up cuneiform tablets, and we had learned how to translate the hieroglyphs for 100 years, but they delayed publishing it so that we would never find out. And then when they did, they sent out Sitchin to lie about it. Because they never wanted you to know what it said. Because if you ever find out, what you'll find out is that the Catholics enslaved us, put us under the God who is the carnal representation of this egotistical, wicked system that we're living in. And there were other parts to this ancient cosmology that we were never allowed to understand about the God of heaven. And we never understood that Jesus came to the world to deliver us and make us free, but they hid that and went back to the Old Testament when it was slavery. But that's just the beginning of what they did. So they took the Alexandrian library and burned it. And in that library was all of the ancient history in plain languages, all the poets and the philosophers and the scientists had written about. And they selected a few works like Pythagoras and Plato and Aristotle or whatever, and they let them through, but only after they burned half of what they wrote and just gave us the simple writings and of course kept them in Latin, and only certain people who went to higher educational facilities ever were allowed to learn Latin until the last 100 years. Now they're starting to get translated into English. People are starting to read all this, but now it's such a vast task. We've got to come out from underneath our prejudices where we were indoctrinated. But now that we're doing that, we're beginning to find out that Pythagoras and Aristotle they got that knowledge from the pharaohs. And that information that is basically science was deep. It wasn't just, 4 elements, earth, fire, water, and air, and they were just stupid, right? This is much deeper. They understood the real reason why the earth spun around, and the real cosmology, and the real astronomy. I guarantee they did not believe that the earth was flat. I promise you. Some of you, most of you, probably have never read all the Vedas and all of the Sumerian tablets, and we're just now getting this stuff. And most of us in mad time. I'm going to show you in these next few videos that they didn't believe in a flat earth. And I'm going to show you that they didn't believe anything like what we're being taught either. And yes, you're right. They didn't go to the moon. I'm going to show you that. But look, we're not going to just make something up. We're going to actually show you the real science that's in our ancient esoteric wisdom. And this will help us to understand exactly what the Bible means when it says that there are pillars that hold up the earth, and there are waters above and waters beneath, and whatever this thing called the firmament is. Or that which is above and that which is beneath, and the stars that are in the blackness of the darkness forever, and the abyss. I mean, think about it. You have to know what the word abyss means, because it's not the same word as the sea. And so there is this cosmology, and it had 12 houses. It talks in the Bible about the houses and the storage place for the snow and the interior rooms of the south. This is all in the Bible. What is it talking about? You guys talk about the pillars of the earth and the foundations of the earth. But what you guys don't understand, this is because it's considered a temple. The whole universe is a creation, a temple, and there are doors. So if you don't know what these doors and gates are, that have to do with the houses, that are 12 houses that go around the circle, and it has to do with all this numerology and the science. So we'll show in these videos what all of this actually means, and we'll not just vaguely be able to understand, but we'll know completely what gravity is, or if there is gravity, what the force is that holds us here, how many lives we've lived or gonna live, what reincarnation and why, and all of it. What is the creation? What is Elohim? What are the gods? What was Atlantis? Is that something that's real? Is the Bible say anything about that? All of this stuff is what we're going to discuss in this video, and we're going to show you some things just here in a minute. If you guys can stay tuned, line upon line, I got to explain this slowly. It's not easy to explain all of this in just a minute. But I'm just going to make a promise that there is an actual science written in books that every nation believed in. Every nation, including the Bible. And it's very clear. And when we get done covering all of this information, we'll know the true shape of the earth. We'll know whether we can leave it, whether we can travel through the space, whether there are beings from other planets and ships out there, what those tunnels are under the ground that we saw the other day, under the sea. We'll find out about the New Jerusalem that's going to come down out of heaven and what all this that these prophets talked about meant. So please stay tuned. They knew about planets and stars and moons. They knew about why we were here. How many incarnations would happen over a period of an age, and what an age was, and the plan, and what reincarnation was, and how long we were, where the planets we were going, and where we were coming from. All of this was recorded in the Sumerian tablets, but very few of them have been translated. The cuneiform, we have thousands of these tablets they've dug up. They haven't translated many of them. And they don't tell you about them. But the one thing that we have is we've got this vast Hindu Vedas, Upanishads, all these ancient verses that for a long, like I say, most of the thousands of years, they were written in Hinduism. We couldn't read Hindu writing in the West. So we were secluded from those writings. But in around the year 1890s or 1880s and stuff, individuals like Madame Blavatsky began to put all this information down and compile it, and made publishing houses, and they started publishing books, not this garbage like a little book with light a candle and sit in a corner, $49.99, and make sure you get your fragrance right, and your colors the birth colors or what. All this is going to somehow enlighten you? No, it's just superficial. This is not what the truth was, but they told us a few little lies to get us off, like flat earth or sit in a corner, or they told these yogis to go over to the West and write books about sitting in a corner and going, and that's going to give us, they told us about nirvana, but you know what? Nobody in the West, I don't even think anybody in India knows what nirvana is anymore. Do you know that you can't sit in a corner and get nirvana ever? It's impossible. Do you know that you have literally assigned a certain lifespan, and that you are going to have to go through, you won't even believe me if I told you, but it's written in the Hindu scriptures. And the same thing is written in the Babylonian and the Sumerian and the Egyptian, and I'll prove it to you. The exact same thing. It's even in the Bible. So, there are so many lifetimes that's prescribed for you, and you can't just, boom, do it, just zip on past it, and you don't have to go through that class. You're so smart. Why? He woke up, nah, that doesn't happen really. I mean, you can be a good student and succeed quicker. There are first fruits and stuff like that before the other harvest the Bible talks about. But you can't skip over 1,000 lifetimes. It takes thousands of lifetimes to get to nirvana. It has nothing to do with sitting in a corner. Nirvana is a specific word in the Hindu scriptures that means you've attained unto many lifetimes. There are 7. You must be incarnated 7 times in a gradual 7 times. They call it 7 rounds on each planet. And there are 70 planets. And then you have to do that over again. And it takes millions of years to reach the nirvana. He said, well, that's ridiculous. If I have to wait that long. No. It doesn't mean that you takes millions of years to reach happiness. You're going to be happy now. The ancient teachings teach us how to be happy now. The whole thing is we have to be happy with where we're at. There's a plan. The plan is beautiful. And when you find out what it really is, it'll blow your mind. But they've hidden all of this from us. They've hidden all of it from us. And when Madame Blavatsky passed away, they took those writings immediately, took over everything over there in Bavaria and Germany, and they waited to publish it, and they didn't, really publish it so that people could have access to it. And they told us in our churches, don't read it. So nobody ever really read it. And the only people that were talking about it were the people that were paid to talk about it. And they were talking about candles and sitting in the corner going, so we never figured out what they were talking about. And when they did talk about it, you got the same reaction, worse then 100 years ago than you did now when you just heard me say it's going to take millions of years. Well, then I ain't doing it, Dave. Forget it. I'm done. I'm just going to leave, right? That ain't the truth. Jesus is coming back in a couple of years and I'm going to heaven. Well, yeah, but you don't know what that means. It means to ascend. We've been descending into the material realm. We've been learning and growing, and it's going to take, we'll discuss that. There's probably going to take several videos to really, and this is interesting because it's going to cover the whole idea of not only who we are, how many times we come here, why, we're here, whether there's a real Jesus, whether there's a real soul, do you have an ego? We're going to talk about all of that. But it also is going to tell us beyond any shadow of a doubt whether the earth is round, my friends. We covered just a little bit yesterday. But we're going to philosophize upon the words that we already have published. They're deep, they're vast, they're many. But you haven't heard about them. I dare say you have never heard some of the things that we're going to speak about in the next couple of few videos. I dare say you probably have not heard half of it. You may have heard one or two of these things, but you thought, well, that's stupid. Wasn't that some weirdo would publish that over there in some, German book in the 1980s, or something, and it was wrong, and it was proved wrong, and that guy was a quack? What we're going to show not only is what these teachings say, but we're going to have it all confirmed by the fact that it's spoken over and over again in various cultures. So, for instance, we were talking about times and these dates and the millions of incarnations and all of these things. We're told about, remember when this whole Sitchin thing was going around and was talking about the Tsar of the Sumerians of 3,600 years? And nobody's been able to understand. All the scholars we don't know what the 3,600 year period is. It's probably when Nibiru's going to come along and crash into the earth and kill us. See, first of all, it's impossible for an asteroid to come crashing into the earth and destroy the earth. You want to know why? You know that video that Santos published 2 videos ago? He made he showed magnets and how the little marbles, make patterns and revolve around 2 magnets, a negative and a positive, a torus field, and they magically stay in their places. They don't get out of their orbits. And you can even bring in another force or another magnet into it. And they don't go, oh, crazy, and start crashing. No, they just form another pattern. And they never bump into each other, ever. And so the universe keeps moving in perfect symmetry. And we're going to find out the exact symmetry of the universe that we live in so that we know the shape and why we're here and how it works. It's all in the ancient wisdom, whether it's Sumerian or whatever. So the Sumerians, we found out, had 3,600 year thing called a Sar. And we knew it might have had something to do with counting how many years was an age. We thought, well, that doesn't make sense. Let me get another drink of coffee. Boy, that's good. But, a lot of people were thinking 3,600 years. What's that have to do with an age? Or a period of time? Well, it matches with the fact that there are 360 degrees in a year. Now, 360 days in a year. But why 3,600? It's times 10 or something, And, what's it have to do with the fact that there are 2,000 years in an age, not 3,600. And so there are 12 ages, and that's 25,200 years. We find out that the Bible mentions these numbers. Remember the 3.5 times, 1,260 days, and the 2,520 days, the 7 times? So we find that the 7 times is intermingled with all of this numerology. 36, 3 and 6 is 9, and 360 degrees, and half of that's 180, and 1 and 8 is 9, and then you got 70 52 weeks in a year, 5 and 2 is 7, and each week is 7 days and 7 days. So all the numbers are in there. You can cut it into 4, quadrants, threes, all the numbers in this system. And the ancient ones gave it to us in a thing called astrology, or the science, the ancient science. It wasn't just a map or a calendar. It was a science, a history book, a prophetic tool. It taught us the elements. It had the 22 letters, the vowels. It was language. It was chemistry, because all of the chemical formulas were in there, and the number of the elements. This was a vast system of knowledge that we were totally kept from. So in the last 100, 200 years, these people started trying to understand why. Why did they try to understand this all of a sudden? Well, first of all, because, we got more knowledge going forth. People are learning. But what did they got to start from the drawing board? They have no clue. They went back to some old writings where somebody had some clues, like 500, 600, 800 years ago. Maybe Ptolemy wrote a few things, and he had kind of forgotten too. But he had some good things in there, but it was written in Latin, and people are, trying to put it all back together. And, of course, the church was like, no, that's anathema, so therefore a lot of it we couldn't even get our mind to grasp, so it took so long. But, of course, it was all there. It was still all there. The Hindu writings, the Sumerian tablets, we started digging them up, started translating them. They're all there. But again, it took a while for us to even accept them and to start reading them. So the Sumerian tablets had this 3,600 years. It fits in the entire age that it takes to go through the zodiac, 25,000 years. And so there are about 514 years that it takes for what the ancient writings say is that we incarnate into a planet. But that planet has 7 manifestations, or 7 gradations, that correspond to the 7 chakras. So, all the way from the highest, most purest, sublime, to the lower, carnal, heavier. And so we have to go through all of the physical, the mental, the astral, casual, all of these ethereal, all these bodies. We have to incarnate 7 times. Each of the planets has, the way they describe it is that, take for instance the Earth. The Earth has a globe, and they call it a globe. There are 7 globes, 7 planets. And the Hindus call them globes, spheres. But they say that the Earth has 7 other bodies, or 6 other bodies other than the physical one. The only one we can see with our eyes is the physical one that we live in. Or the one we're conscious in. We live in all of them. But we're only conscious right now because we're in the physical. But we've already had to have incarnated into the other dimensions of that one planet. So we do that 7 times. And then we go to another planet and we do it 7 times. So they call that going in to the 7 globes and then having 7 rounds, which makes 49 incarnations. Each lifespan was understood to be about 70 years. And it came out to be about 514 years that it took us to go through these 7 planets. So we have to understand that a lot of this sometimes doesn't come out exact. And we don't know whether there is an exact time, like sometimes it's just 70 and sometimes 72. Sometimes it's 360 degrees, but there's actually 365 days in a year. So there's always sometimes we don't know if they're just rounding the numbers off or if there's a more accurate numbers. I think that the numbers don't always happen accurately. Like, for instance, not everybody lives 70 years. Sometimes you might die when you're 30 or 40, and then, in other lives you may live longer. But they have these average timetables, and then they have these ages and stuff. So I think that what happens is that we go by the 360 days, but then we have intercalary, months and stuff like that. So they had this method and they went by this. So a lot of times they will just use the word 70 or 7 or something. And they were sort of averages. But you know how in the Bible it says, and so all this is in the Bible, as we'll find out. So the angel tells Daniel, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people to make an end of sin. What? What would be the principle behind that? Why do we have to wait 70 times, 70 weeks? What is that? What is that all about? Well, this is where we get the 3,600. So you have 7 times 7, which is 49. And the 50th years of Jubilee, or everybody goes free in the Bible. This is based on this ancient wisdom. So it's actually about 500 years. 514 years or something right around there. And that is 7 incarnations on one planet through the 7 graduations. 70 years each. And when we're done with that, we do that 7 more times. And they call that the 7 rounds. Or a chain. They call that a chain in the Hindu scriptures. So now we're at 3,600 years. So, go back. 70 years of a lifespan. You do it 7 times. And you get around 500 years. And you do that 7 times again. And you come out to 3,600. And that's a particular period that's marked off as a chain. So we have to go through this particular chain. Now, we haven't reached nirvana. You think, well, my goodness, we've incarnated 7 times on 7 planets, 7, times. That should be good enough, right? Well, life's eternal. We get to go, trust me, every time you advance, it's so worth everything you went through. You just look at life right now. It's worth, you went to work and saved up some money and now you bought a house. It was worth it. You went to school for many years and graduated from high school and went and got a job and worked hard. But now you're 90 years old and you look back and you've got this beautiful family. And you've got all the flowers and the memories and things that, of course now in our world there's a lot of bad things going around. But imagine what it could be. See, in the real universe, everything's worth it. And as you go forward, it's exponential. So, we get to a place where we start advancing so far. The colors are so beautiful. The worlds that we're going to go to are so amazing. The height, the depth, and the breadth, and the width that no man can conceive what is to be revealed in us. So do not think that this is too much. Oh, I'm not talking about 7 times times 7 times in hell. Okay, this is hard. There is a classroom, yes, but there is no such thing as hell in that sense. The only time that there would be is when you descend. And that is because, let's say that you did something terribly, 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 terribly wrong. There are consequences. We pay for that. But it's not forever. And it's proportionate to what we've done. And it's only corrective. Nobody dies and is tortured by our Father in heaven. Trust me. And the ancient wisdom tells us that. So there's your 3,600 years, but it goes on. And the 3,600 years is one chain, and you keep doing those chains until you go all the way around to the 25,000 years that it takes to go all the way around the 12 houses. You say, well, now we're done, right? Yee, we get to immortality. We are going to have immortality the moment we begin to realize and wake up. We're going to get that very soon. See, we don't always remember our past lives simply because, we were like worms and snakes and evil, warriors shooting and decapitating people on the battlefield. We don't want to remember that. We repress that. We can remember any of it. You have dreams. You might remember the beautiful times and moments. You wake up, you forget about it because you have something to do in this lifetime. Something you're overcoming. You've repressed a bunch of memories that at this point we have been living through almost like a hell. But we're about to go into some higher realms. There are stages. We go up for a while, and we go down for a while, but everything we do is well worth it. So in the past, up to this point, remember, snakes haven't developed a soul. We've developed a soul. We've had a soul for a long time, and we're developing the third eye so that we can awaken. And that's going to be what is basically constituting immortality. Resurrection unto eternal life. That's coming in this next coming age. But we're still going to progress forever, my friends, because just as we went from the 4 gradual incarnations from the bird, or the fish, the bird, the mammals, the men, as it says in 1 Corinthians 15:40. We're also going to have the resurrection of eternal life, which is like, one is like the sun and like the moon or the stars, and each star different in glory. We're going to have glories. We're going to be transformed from glory to glory. And this is not a bad thing. This is great. It's going to go on for a long time, millions of years. And actually forever. Actually forever. But each of these stages have it marked. They just don't have forever marked, because there's a certain point where we don't need to know. But in the ancient wisdom, it tells us about different stages along the road, mile markers. And so, when we get to the 25,000, we've gone around the entire astrological wheel. But we still have to go around again. Because there are aspects that we will go through the next time that we didn't go through the first time. So let me go at it this way to help us kind of get a picture of what that means. So they call the sun the planetary logi, or the logos. Now, why would it call it the logos? That's something we found out from our New Testament. Jesus is the logos. What does that mean? It means the Word. So, the universe is created by the Word. And God is light. But we have many lights. There's a light in the center of the galaxy. The galaxy itself is just one of the various gradual planes of existence that we'll attain unto. But way long before that, we attain unto the planetary logos. We become like Jesus. Remember, Jesus said his Father was greater than him? He does everything he sees his Father doing. Jesus was God. And yet he said, ye are gods, and the scripture cannot be broken. But how so? How can we all be God? Because Jesus said, I am in my Father, and my Father is in me. And ye are in me, and I am one with him, and we are one. So you see, we're not graduated. Like John the Baptist said, I'm not even worthy to untie his sandal. I'm just a lamp shining in the wilderness, in the desert, crying, come out to meet him. Prepare ye the way. But this man is the true light that shineth and cometh into the world and enlighteneth every man. This is the sun that when you wake up, what is the light that lightens every man? It's the sun. And that's the logos, the word. And then there are the 7 helpers, or the 7 archangels. The Bible calls them. And the Hindus call them other things. And those 7, each are like organizers or directors of each of the planets. And they have 7, each of them have 7 under directors that are over each incarnation. And there are all these vast numbers of individuals. And these are the angels that the Bible is talking about, that take you from your incarnation to your next incarnation, that watch and guide of you, that keeps you on the path for this present incarnation, to teach you the things you needed to learn that you came here to learn. This is a classroom. And this is what this is all about. And when we attain unto these certain goals that we're going to be learning, then at some point we go through certain gradual progressions, and then we attain into stuff. And our reward is that we then can become someone who can teach. See, now you've gone through the school and you've learned, you've got your degree, now you become a teacher. And then you get to become a planetary logi or an angel. And yes, the angels neither marry nor are they given in marriage. Because you see, there are very few realms like ours where we're paired up into male and female and we have this sexual thing. Many planets and many and in higher realms, the angels, that's why Mary, who was a woman, is now called he by Madame Blavatsky as Moria. Because all the angels are always he. And it doesn't mean they're males. They're neither male nor female, like Jesus said. But they're like the angels of heaven. They're neither male nor female. And he who is accounted worthy of attaining into that resurrection is neither male nor female. So, we find then that the Sumerian tablet speaks of these 3,600 year periods. And the reason that they were marking these types of periods is they have to do with the universal measurement of time that all of the kingdoms had. It was divided into 12, 360 degrees, 30 days in the month, 7 days in a week. And they used the decimal system in combination with it. And so all together, we go through the 7 incarnations 7 times until we reach and go through the 12 houses. And we go through them many times, each time concentrating on a specific house and other specific qualities that we didn't conquer and master the first time, until we reach 432,000 years, which is another age that the Hindu system talks about. And then we go another 4 times 432,000, and we reach a 1,728,000 year mark, which is a great age. But that particular one is a period of time where we get kind of like a diploma. We've attained unto something. So this 1,728,000 is just half of it, and the other half is another 1,728,000. The whole thing is 3,600,000 and something thousand. And when we get to that, it's this great age, and we get a diploma, and we move up. But this goes on and on and on, and they have numbers to show us how far in advance and in the future this will go, all the way to something like, I think it's 3 trillion years, 3,110 years, no, 3,110,000,000,040 million years. And that is when you reach nirvana. And what does it mean to reach nirvana? See, so obviously you don't sit in a corner and go and reach nirvana. You can't skip 300 million years. I don't care how smart you are. And you wouldn't want to. Because you see, try to imagine our Lord Jesus is glorious. He came and died for us. He prepared and created this entire solar system, just like his Father had done. Aren't you glad that he went through his glories? It says in the scriptures, we'll go from glory to glory, even as is done by the Lord. So our Lord went through all of this. He went through death. What is it that he ascended, but also that he descended first into the lower regions of the earth? So I am so glad that he went through all of his classrooms and got his degrees. Because imagine if he'd have come to the world and he's like, I don't know. I think I'm kind of scared. I don't want to die. I don't want to be humble. What if he was a little bit hot-tempered and cranky, and he didn't like people, and he didn't bring the children unto him and bless them? I'm so glad he learned that humility that he learned in all of his many lifetimes. That he became the planetary Christ. And you see, all of us are going to attain unto those things too. And we're going to enjoy it. Even if you were just a dog, yes, dogs eventually become humans. They graduate. For a dog to become a human, it probably takes a couple maybe 3 million years. That's a long time, and I know it seems crazy. You're probably thinking, why does he think he knows how long it takes? Well, it says it in the Hindu scriptures. It's the most detailed, comprehensive information, the Vedas. But we in the West have not been told. Even people in the East, the actual normal, everyday people, you know, they have this big caste system over there. You got to put a little dot in the middle of your forehead, right? Because a wicked organization went over there and organized it so that they would never come and come up through the ranks and learn. They kept them down. They made them slaves. Because for a certain period of time, the world went through a time where we were ruled by the lower deity. It's just, it's something that we had to go through. It was a certain test that we all had to go through. And it's almost over. And now we're going to become free. We're going to go to a classroom, or we're going to go on a field trip. We're going to see the Grand Canyon, and we're going to experience we're going to fly. We're going to go through some amazing things coming up, friends. Don't miss it. Don't be fooled. And miss out on this one, because if you don't make it, then you have to go back and skip the graduation. Then now you're not going to go suffer and die and tortured in hell forever like they talk about. No. But you won't get to move on. And I want to tell you, in the last maybe 7 or 10, 15 minutes here we got left, I've been going over quite a bit. I want to tell you something about the world that we live in, what shape it is. First of all, they call each of these planets, they call them spheres or globes. But what's interesting is, and we've talked about this before, how if the sun is fire, and it's in the middle, it's a source, it should have a body around it. That's how it works, you know, it's pulling with mass, gravity, it's pulling, and has an influence and a sphere, and it's this great light, this energy that goes outward, and there's energy that comes backward. This is electricity and magnetism. The two forces, the yin and the yang, the male and the female, the negative and the positive. So the higher energy is emanating outward. And the light comes from the sun and goes out, and then at the outer limits it creates its body. The image is what the mind is inside observing. The thinker, the being, is in the inner sanctuary. And around him, he puts on his body, the material. So if you look at the planets, you see these 7 planets. And the outer planet, well, even in the Hindu scriptures, they mention 10. We'll talk about that. We're not going to have time to explain that, because we said there were 7 and now there's 10. Well, there's explanation for that. They did have 10 planets altogether. And we'll go through the 10, like we said, 70 times 7. And so, but look at the outer planet. We call it Pluto. And in the elemental table, the highest element is helium. And so in Greek, the sun was called Helios. It's the highest. Like Ethereum, you know? Helium. It's very high, and it floats above air. But at the very other end, in the base, deep, heavy, carnal, material part, you have the heaviest metals like gold and lead. Very heavy. But heavier than lead is uranium. That's why they use that to make bombs with, because it's got so many electrons that it's more heavy. It's heavier. And heavier than that is plutonium. So you have uranium that they use to make nuclear bombs, and they have plutonium that they make even bigger bombs. So that's why we call that outer planet Pluto. Well, why then, if it's heavy, if it's the body, it's the densest part, why would it just be a planet? Why wouldn't it be all the way around? Well, according to the Hindu scriptures, each of the planets are they occupy the exact same space. So you see, now it doesn't ever show a picture in the Bhagavad Gita and show you how, here's the sun in the middle and the planets are going around or superimpose each planet on top of each other. But if you read the scripture, the verses, it says that each of the planets are superimposed upon the other, so that the Earth has 7 other dimensions. There's 7 Earths. And the only one we see is the physical Earth that we're looking at. But 2 of the other Earths are also 2 of the other planets. So out of the 7 Earths, one of which we can see visibly, well, actually, it says that there are 2 ethereal bodies that when we go through the 7 incarnations on this one planet called Earth. We go through 2 ethereal bodies, 2 astral bodies, and 3 physical bodies. One of which is the Earth that we live on. The other one they call Mercury, and the other one they call Mars. So it's a little difficult to understand because they don't give all the details. But it appears to me that when you're trying to understand all of this, that we go from the Sun to Mercury to Venus to Earth to Mars to Jupiter to Saturn to Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And now Pluto might not even be included in there, although the Sumerian tablets and all of them talk about Pluto, and they used to call it Gaga. That's why I think Lady Gaga called herself that. I guess she's probably involved in the Freemasons or something, and they learned about Gaga, so they named their kid that. I don't know. I'm not sure why she called herself that. But Gaga in the Sumerian is Pluto. So they knew about that planet, although we can't see that with the naked eye at all. It's so small, it's way smaller than the moon. Way small. I mean, it's like the size of an asteroid. It's not very big, but they saw it and they knew about it in the Sumerian tablets. So they had these 10 planets. But according to the ancient cosmology, each of the 7 Earths are superimposed. They occupy the same space, but they're all in different dimensions. So when we go from one incarnation to another, we come right back to the Earth, but this time we're working on a different chakra or a different plane, or we're in a different body or conscious in a different way. And then we go to another incarnation on another planet, which is, one of them is we go into Venus. But Venus doesn't have Earth, Mercury, and Mars, but it has like Venus and Jupiter or something like that. So it seems to me that what's going on is the first time we incarnate, we drop off on the first planet, Mercury, and we have 7 of these planets, but not the outer 3. And then when we go to another one, we skip Mercury and we start with Venus because we've already overcome the one planet. But it seems what they're saying is that all the planets are in the same place. But each planet, and well, all of them are the moon. Or I should say, all of the planets are the sun. But they are the outer rings of the sun. And so, it also says in there that each of the planets are larger than the prior one. That would mean that Mercury is supposed to be larger than the sun, and Venus should be larger than Mercury, and the Earth should be larger than Venus. Mars should be larger than the Earth. Jupiter should, now it's true that Jupiter is larger than all the others, and they get bigger, and then they start then they get to Pluto, and that's not even very large. But it is true that the outer planets are much larger. But now that's what our science is telling us. They're giving us this model. We don't know how big Mars is. Maybe Aristotle knew and they have geometry, and I don't know. And I don't even know how accurate I'm interpreting this, but I believe this is the way the Hindu scriptures teach. And so what it sounds to me like is that the way that we go from one incarnation to another is that you can't go from one, when you're in this particular world, you're held into this consciousness by a silver cord, the Bible says. And that's in Ecclesiastes. We'll get into that one of these other days. If that cord breaks, then you die. And then you can be literally incarnated into the next higher world, or depending on wherever the angels take you. But you can't literally go to another world while you're on this world. You couldn't get in a ship and go somewhere. You could visit for a moment, but you could only do it in the astral. You couldn't do it physically. You can't go there physically. You can't take your physical body there. But you could visit them astrally. And you could live there for a short period of time and get to know and maybe talk to them or see them or communicate with them. But you'd have to come back because you're connected to that world that you live in. And it seems to me that when you leave through the opening in the top of the head. And remember, the top of our head is the sun. The highest chakra in the top of the head. The bright sun behind the pictures you see of Jesus. And remember, we're all one. So just as the planets are superimposed, they're all different planets, but they're all superimposed upon the sun and occupy the same space, and they're just different dimensions. And so all of us humans, even though we see each other or appear to be separate, we're all occupying the same space at the same time. That's why they say Jesus is in you. He's the prototype, and we're all superimposed upon him, every human. And the only way then to get into somebody, to become one with somebody, is either mentally or sexually, from the top or from the bottom. If you do it with the mind, you do it in a much more enduring and blessed way. If you do it from the other option that we gave, it is a very temporary thing, and sometimes, if it's not done absolutely correct, with the intention of knowing what you're doing, it can lead to a lot of heartache and trouble and bondage. And so we have to enter into some things with holy covenants, with pure intentions, and with God's blessings. So anyway, as I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking, I don't know if I really explained this very well. Well, it's pretty complicated. And so I would like to go back and kind of reorganize some of the things we said and maybe explain it a little bit better. We have a lot more to say about that. There's a lot that we could say about that. Certain individuals who have mentioned parts of this, scriptures that relate to this, whether it be in the Bible, things that Jesus said, things that certain prophets have said that confirm all of this. And we'll talk about this and get this clear in our mind. And if there's anything that we have said so far that maybe didn't make total sense, we'll clear that up. So I'm going to go ahead and close today, well over an hour, and we'll pick it up here tomorrow. I'm still waiting for Santos to get back to us and see what he has to say about the last video we did, and maybe even this video. And I think that'll be fun. And I think both of us, Santos and I, will both learn from each other on this. And all of us will learn from this. And we'll move towards a place where we will have full understanding of what we're really doing. Because the time is here for these things to be revealed. Anyway, I'm David Vos. I'll see you tomorrow, guys. Have a good one.